Okay, it's about 1:45 on Monday, July 13th, 2026, and I am calling to order the monthly meeting of the Crime Victims Compensation Board. It's my understanding that all 5 board members are present, constituting a quorum. First order of business for today is a review of the meeting minutes from June 8th, 2026. I have reviewed the draft minutes. I have no questions, comments, or concerns. Does anybody else?
No.
From that deafening silence or affirmative answer in the negative, I will assume that nobody has any suggestions or corrections, and I will make a motion, therefore, to approve the June 8th draft minutes as written. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. It appears the board is unanimous in approving the minutes from the June 8th, 2026 meeting. Next order of business is compensation program report. Anna, is Anna giving this one
Yep.
today?
That's me. So I will go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can everybody see the board report?
Yes.
All right. So this will be the last board report for FY26. So for the month of June, our top 3 spending categories were simple assault, aggravated assault, and domestic assault. The compensation program made a total of 50 payments on 37 claims, totaling $30,963.35. And the sexual assault program made 3 payments on 2 claims, totaling $2,284.91. Together, for both programs, we made 53 payments on 39 claims, totaling $33,248.26 for the month of June. Our top spending categories were lost wages at $8,117.62, followed by counseling at $7,605, and then medical facility at $6,488.70. Right, and then year to date. So our top spending category for FY26 was domestic assault, and we spent a total of $136,843.30 in comparison to $100,840.93 last year. Second highest spending category was homicide at $106,636.94, which is actually less than what we spent last year. And then third was aggravated assault at $95,357.06 in comparison to $66,390.73 that we spent last year. The compensation program made a total of 801 payments on 252 claims, totaling $499,810.52. Pretty significant jump from our spending last year. Sexual assault forensic program made 85 payments on 44 claims, totaling just over $116,000. And so total for both programs for FY26 was $616,080.28. Moving over to spending categories, our top spending category for FY26 was lost wages. We spent $102,650.21, significantly more than we spent last year, which was just over $45,000. Second highest category was medical facility at $88,971.21, about $10,000 more than we spent last year. And third category was funeral at $67,016.45, but we did spend about $12,000 less than we did last year. For sexual assault counseling, we spent just over $5,000. Follow-up appointments was $513.01. The HIV prophylaxis was $11,679.14, and the initial sexual assault exam was our top spending category for the sexual assault program at $98,912.61. Anyone have any questions before I move on to claims by county?
I don't.
Nope. Alrighty. Okay, so for the month of June, the Victims Compensation Program received a total of 29 claims. We did not receive any claims from Caledonia, Grand Isle, Orange, or Washington. Rutland almost gave Chittenden County some competition this month. Typically, Chittenden is the county we receive the most claims from by a pretty significant margin, but Rutland was at 7 and Chittenden at 8 this month. So like I mentioned, so June of this year, we received 29 claims. June of last year was 36, so a 19.44 decrease. Year to date, for FY26, we received 397 claims, and we received 418 last year for just about a 5% decrease. The sexual assault program received 16 claims this month in comparison to June of last year, 15 for a 6.66% increase. And for year to date, received 185 claims in comparison to the 215 they received last year, so a 13.95% decrease. All right, and there are our totals for FY26.
Hey, Anna, one question,
Yes.
and you may not, yeah, you may not be able to answer it, and I certainly wouldn't fault you if you couldn't. Talking about the decrease or increase in claims from one year to another. Do you know if there's a significant correlation between reported crime rates and compensation claims received?
I'm not sure. So I know in the event of like a higher profile homicide, we will definitely get an increase in claims, not like from the victim's immediate family. But I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? Just I'm not sure if I got all of it.
Yeah, I think I phrased it poorly. Have you ever perceived a correlation between the volume of compensation claims we receive and reported crime rates to the state police or whoever collates crime occurrence data in Vermont?
I don't know if I've ever like actually, checked out the exact correlation. I do know that when we see kind of a news story for like a higher profile crime, we will very often get applications in relation to that. We work really closely with the state's attorneys, victim advocates, and so we get most of our referrals from them. So if there is something relatively high profile going on, we almost always receive an application for it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Are you done then?
Yep, I will go ahead and pass it over to Michelle.
Okay, Michelle, restitution.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. So I currently have up just the FY26 restitution judgment orders. We broke them down for Jen to send out to the advocates by county. So this shows it's total statewide, but then also by county. So for the fiscal year of 26, we had 1,405 new orders. Not surprising, about a third of those came from Chittenden County. So every month they definitely by far have the highest number. Again, Rutland and Washington and Franklin are right up there as well. They, all have larger box stores that are frequent flyers for offenders and retail thefts. 9 in Essex County, which is kind of surprising to me. And then just the one in Grand Isle, which is pretty typical. The other one that's kind of surprising, I know Addison is a smaller county, but 25. Like I feel like in years ago we used to get more from Addison County, and I know there's been a few changes there over the last couple of years that's probably impacted some of that. But it's just interesting to see, the data all together, to see like where the orders are actually coming from. Any questions with any of that? Okay.
No.
Let's You should now be seeing just the FY 26 for June for the restitution judgment orders. So we received a total of 121 new orders. Of those, 47 came from Chittenden County. Again, not surprising. There were definitely some offenders who had multiple orders. So again, that's a pretty common occurrence as well. Followed by Washington, Franklin, and Orleans all had 10 orders, so they're definitely the runners up, and Bennington with 9. The surprising one here for me again was Addison, so they had 5. So about a fifth of their total orders for the year came in June. So that's just interesting. They have typically been like either none or one for several months now, so that was an interesting final month for the year. And overall, of the 121 orders, 84 of those were for business victims. So that represents about 65% of the orders that we're getting, for the month of June were for businesses. And again, that's a trend that we've been seeing now for some time, again, due to a lot of the retail theft cases that we're seeing. Any questions with that? If not, I'll move on.
I
Okay.
wonder if in Addison, how much of this has to do with the fact they have a really great deputy who is now taking all of the criminal matters. So just can't help but think about that.
Right. I mean, staffing definitely makes a huge difference.
Yes.
For sure. Having the correct staff who knows what they're doing and wants to look out for victims is important. Okay, so now I'm just going to bring up, this is the board summary for June, and the final one for the fiscal year. So we brought in a total of $65,555 in the month of June. That's what the collectors brought in. That exceeded our monthly goal of $50,000 by $15,555. We brought in another 7,600-ish in tax money. So again, that always helps with, our bottom line. Overall for the fiscal year, our goal was $600,000. We brought in 696,502. So again, that's not 502, 512. So that's what the collection case managers brought in. And again, with our goal being 600,000, we beat that by 96,512. But with tax money, that amount tallies just over $1 million. So I'm really, impressed with the staff. The money that they bring in is pretty incredible for a small state, especially when a lot of the folks we work with are homeless or unemployed, currently actively using. So they definitely do a lot of good work on behalf of victims. With that said, obviously money in means money out. So we made a total of 3,013 payments to victims last year. So that's also a pretty huge number. I don't have the tally of how much we've paid out. I wish I did, but I know last year we were pretty even with what came in and what went out. But we were able to advance $285,000 to individual victims from our fund. That was down about 30,000 from last year when we were about 314. So again, that's something that's sort of a moving target depending on what's being ordered and what can be documented. A chunk of the money that we collected goes out to state agencies. So this year we sent out about $155,000 on behalf of state agencies. So that's everything from department, the Agency of Transportation to, PATH to the DMV, any agency. Mostly it's Medicaid and Agency of Transportation that we see a lot of, Fish and Wildlife. But again, we do collect when they are the victims as well. The other pieces of the total that we brought in, just under 10,000 came from lottery. So in addition to intercepting tax, we're also able to intercept lottery. Most of the money comes in around Christmas time, as I'm sure you're not surprised when people are buying those tickets more often. But that definitely helps, provide a little bit of revenue each year for us as well. Any questions with any of that?
Just a point of curiosity, How is the money collected on lottery winnings?
So
mean,
if you win more than $500, you have to bring
okay,
it either to a bank or the lottery commission. And so every month we send them a file of who has an outstanding balance, and so they get flagged. So if there's social matches, they give us a call, confirm how much is owed, and then they'll send us either all or part of the check.
okay, good.
Yes, not surprising. Everyone says it wasn't their ticket; they were cashing it for somebody else. It's always our favorite. Like, oh, that's the first time I've ever heard that. Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you all.
Thank
Okay,
you.
the financial report, Carol?
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to just show you where we kind of landed in our funds and our revenues. So you've heard a little bit from compensation and restitution on where they're at. I did want to, before I started into this, Greg, I did want to just let you know on a follow-up on your question to Anna. We deal with multiple federal grants where we require our subrecipients to report on the number of victimizations and so forth. We've also worked with the Crime Victim Research Group. So we do have a lot of data on the number of victimizations, who's reporting, how many victims are served. So there is a large amount of that. I just wanted you to know that we may not have the direct correlation with the comp program, but we certainly do through our federal grants.
Okay,
So
thank
just
you.
wanted to kind of give you a little more information on that. So we deal with data on all of that a lot with all of our federal grants. On the screen, what you're seeing now is basically where we are. So we can see that we ended state fiscal year 26 with the compensation program being about 319,000 below the 25 or 26 appropriation. It says 25, it should say 26. And then the restitution, 71,000 below their appropriation, and the DVSV fund, 354. So again, we're looking at our average revenues. These amounts are what we build our budget on. So again, we're looking to bring in those revenues, but there are many, many different things that also can affect that. So again,
Sorry to interrupt. On my screen is Vermont versus Adams Lawrence, and not your.
huh?
I
I
don't-
think you may have that open, Richard, because no
Yeah,
one's.
that's your screen. My screen shows what she's talking about.
Mine
Okay.
does too.
I do have my big red line around it, so there we go.
Okay. Well, it just flipped over to.
Sorry, you must have,
screen.
yeah.
Sorry
you
to
must have-
interrupt. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Can you see it now, Richard? Are you able to see my report?
I can.
Okay. So what you are seeing is again, what Michelle was talking about for restitution. Again, the amounts that they actually brought in. So this is what comes directly from the courts through fines and fees. And then this is what is collected through the restitution department. So we're seeing that. So there's that part of it. What I'd like to do is we can also go to, and I'll follow up with a little bit about restitution, just because one of the things that we talk about is, I think Michelle had mentioned, like how much was being paid out to victims. So when you get the report that I submit to you all, you can see that, over $1 million was paid out to individuals, businesses, and prior claims in 2026. And then this is the amount that was taken in, how much the expenses are for the comp program for personnel and operating expenses, and where we are with our cash balance. At the same point, we can also look at comp by type. I want to show you that essentially for 26, we actually used about 314,000 out of the special comp fund to support victim direct payments to victims, and we used an additional 239,000 out of federal funds. I think what's important to look at is that when we look at our overall fund balances, we can see that comp started off with 1.6 million. We can see that their revenues, even though their revenues were below 314,000 that you saw in the other spreadsheet, that their spending was less and that they were able to actually increase their cash balance. And we've seen that in the reports, they're not spending quite as much on some of those things. We've also, I wanted it to be noted that we're also using some general funds to support some expenses that were heavily burdened by this compensation fund. So things that we used to pay for out of the compensation fund, we've been fortunate enough to be able to use some general funds for. And so that's why we're able to really see that this fund is somewhat stabilized in the manner in that it is. And again, just a small $10,000 change. I think it's also important to note, and Jen, I'm sorry if I'm taking this away from you, but we did receive 100,000. We've talked about it in numerous meetings, that we asked for $100,000 to support our administration, meaning the folks that are working on grants. And we did get that in 27. So that too will help with this fund because again, the compensation fund was kind of the bucket of money to support a lot of cost here at the center. So by having some additional general funds, that helps pay for electricity, rent, some of the, actual operating costs for the center. We saw that restitution started off with 885. And what's hurting restitution in some ways is the fact that, again, they're paying out victims. And I hate to say it's hurting it because I'm looking at the numbers only. But what that means is they're supporting payments to victims. But what it does essentially is reduce that cash balance in the fund. And we've talked about this. We've talked about, ways that we need to look at potentially increasing revenue sources into this fund to be able to support those payments to victims. DVSV, they too, you can see, had a deficit of about 251 in their cash balance. It's also important to know that they also received a $350,000 one-time fund in state fiscal year 27 that will also help reduce that. So overall, I'd say considering, everything that's going on with the funding and again, you've seen the decrease in funding with those charts that I provided to you all. With the revenues, you can see that even though we're seeing these declines in revenues, that we seem to be doing a pretty good job considering our revenues are about half of what they used to be. So there is that. The only other thing I wanted to just say is that right now we're also in the midst of our federal grants applications. I know that we mentioned this in previous meetings that we had a grants manager leave and then we had another one give her notice that she's leaving. She's moving out of state. So it was very important to us to get the federal grant applications. They're all due in the month of July. Couldn't be a worse month. But I will say that Amanda, our grants manager, has been working on them. And as of this week, we'll have 4 of the 6 applications out the door and submitted to the federal awarding agency. So again, I think that that's really important to know that, we are getting the work done. We have hired our grants financial manager. She started last week full time. She's doing a great job. And yeah, I'm excited, so excited. She's doing great. So again, and other staff, I just want to say other staff have stepped up. We've had a person in our comp staff that helped with one of our applications. So, it's really been nice that the center people are pulling together and making sure that the hard work that needs to be done is being done. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Carol. Any questions
you,
or
Carol.
comments?
I'm good. Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, Jen, you're up.
All right, good afternoon. I got a frog in my throat. Yes, as Carol said, we did secure a $100,000 increase to our general fund base. So this is not one time. It will go into our base and then will be included in terms of the sort of automatic add-in that happens each year, whether it's 3%, 4%. And I know 100,000 probably doesn't sound like a lot, but it is to us because we receive very, very few general fund dollars. So it's a step in the right direction, helps us offset a lot of operational costs that other agencies with state employees are not held solely responsible for because they can pool into whether it be, the technology contracts, health insurance contracts, and the like. So, it's not a super exciting amount of money or a super exciting way we can spend it because it covers costs that we would otherwise have to dig deep in to find a way to do so. But yeah, so that was good. And as Carol mentioned, there's been a lot going on in Grants Land, and we are trying to hire somebody to take this work back on so it doesn't fall on Carol and on our new promotion, Samantha, as much as it has. She hasn't run for the hills yet, so she's still with us. But we are trying to find somebody who's just the right fit. We don't just want to hire anybody for this position. It is an important liaison between the center and the work that we do in communities. And we need somebody with knowledge of grants, but also with a commitment to the work. So we're working on that, and we're hopeful that we will find that person. But in the meantime, as Carol said, we've had staff offer to help out, and Carol and Sam have been amazing, and certainly Amanda has really showed her commitment to seeing us through till the end of July. So that's very appreciated. As far as legislative wrap up, I think Mel sent you, you did send the details of what happened this session.
Yes,
Um,
we have it.
okay, I don't know if people have questions or I can just go over some of the highlights, but I'm certainly not going to walk everybody through it. So if people do have questions, I'm happy to answer those, or I can just hit some of the highlights.
Why don't you hit the high points, Jen?
Okay.
And,
Um,
and you did talk about this in some detail last month.
Yes. So all of these pieces are finalized. I do want to say that obtaining victims' rights in cases where mental health is an issue, whether it be incompetency or a finding of not guilty by reason of insanity, is huge. Susie will remember when I was victim advocate coordinator many moons ago, this was a big deal for all of you. Like, what happens when this case goes down that road and victims get no information? And we finally turned the corner
Jen,
after, yep.
do I understand that legislation applies only to defendants charged with crimes punishable by life?
This one does, yes. So it's not opening the door up completely. And it was really important, and that was really important to enable this proposal to move forward. There's a lot of opposition in a couple of committees that have derailed everything that has been achieved in other committees. This bill went to 7 different committees. Actually, no, nine committees to be vetted. And having it even with this limited approach, it was still extremely controversial. Um, but it does turn the corner on the serious cases to allow victims to be heard in person, to allow them to be noticed, and to give them some basic rights. And it also creates a step forward towards making sure that we begin to establish a forensic facility and a program for competency restoration. As I've mentioned, I think in these meetings before, we're one of 2 states that doesn't have this. So, really hopeful for victims and survivors that when somebody's found, uh, especially incompetent, that they're just not And it's important for people who've been charged as well, because what we've been doing is just warehousing them. So it's trying to bring things to a point where we can move cases forward.
So are we in company with Hawaii or Mississippi in being one of two states that doesn't have a forensic facility?
Oh, we wouldn't be with Mississippi. They'd be right out of the gate on this one. Probably maybe Hawaii. I forget who the other state is at this point. But there's been a lot of work on this bill, and it's been, yeah, it's something I took on wholeheartedly back when I got this job in 2021. And there's been a lot of heartbreak and a lot of work. And finally, we at least corner. It's not perfect, but we turn a corner. There'll be rulemaking. We'll be involved in that process and overseeing it. So very
Well,
happy about that.
as a former
Um,
prosecutor, I thank you for your
Also, I
efforts.
just want to flag that um, we, the center brought forward language 2 years in a row to create a victim notification task force working group. Um, we chaired that group last year. That was quite a group. And all legislative recommendations that were made were enacted. So very happy about that. In terms of, especially it's focused on information for victims post conviction at this point, but making sure that law enforcement from the outset, which they do have obligations already in statute, are letting victims know about the victim automated victim notification system, and also the offender locator system. One of the pieces that came out of our work was that there's a huge gap when somebody's been detained, especially over the weekend, um, and victims not getting that information that somebody's been released when they've been detained. So this has resulted in many instances, actually, of people who've been victims of domestic and sexual violence being re-traumatized because there's a gap between when that information is entered into the automated notification system and when victims find out about it. Also, because we made some changes to statute, DOC is now going to change their automated notification system to allow victims to be able to pick and choose what notifications they want. They had done away with that ability to um, allow a victim to determine what they want. So it was either nothing or all in. And not all victims want information on everything. For example, victims could get information on when somebody's transferred to a different facility, when they're being released to court for a hearing, parole, for example, when they're being discharged altogether, earned time. And what they had interpreted the law to mean was that, well, we don't have any choice. We have to do these notifications. So we tweaked a lot of provisions in law so that victims will now be able to choose which notifications they want and which ones they don't want. And that was really important. We had two survivors on the group who were really helpful too, in terms of really establishing that if we do nothing, if we don't do anything more, we have to bring back choice for victims and survivors. So really happy with the outcome of a lot of other pieces happened with that work group that are really positive, but very happy with that. And made a couple of changes, as far as making it a specific crime relating to sexual extortion, disclosure of explicit images without consent. We didn't really have a statute to address that. It would have to go through the typical extortion statute. So for somebody, many people I'm sure are aware of the stories where it's usually a young person who is tricked into creating images because they think it's somebody else on the other end of the screen. It's not, and either they're tricked into providing more images or extorted to provide more images or to provide money. And so this will more directly address those instances rather than asking people to fit that square peg into a round hole. And
Jen, you muted yourself.
sorry, there are a couple more pieces. Some still need a little bit more work. It might be weird that we were following and involved in the professional regulation of massage parlors, but that is an area where there's a lot of trafficking that's going on. We didn't get quite where we wanted to get. They only required that the establishment be licensed, and I've been working with a victim who went to an independent person who was not, and she was sexually assaulted, as was another woman. So we're just going to try and take another bite at the apple next year. So we made a lot of good steps this year, and there's a lot more work to be done.
Thank
Anything
you,
else,
Jen.
Not at this time. We're still plugging away on the strategic plan. So hopefully, and thank you, Susan Ide, for sticking with us and working on that with us. And we'll have more detail on that hopefully in the next couple of months. That Vermont buys thing, and I know Mel, you're like, ugh, that Vermont buys thing slowed us down for several months. So, but we're back at it.
Any other questions, comments from board members, staff, members of the public?
Thanks for the work on the legislation, Jen. I'll be interested to see how some of those changes improve things.
Well, I hope so. You know how it is, Susie.
I do.
We can change the law, but doesn't mean we change practice. That's going to be
That's-
like 10 more years down the road.
I know that.
Thank you.
Anything else? I guess not. So I would then make a motion to adjourn the July 13th meeting of the Crime Victims Compensation Board. Is there a second for that motion?
I second.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? No, then the public portion of this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
See you next month.
Bye.